Hey, it's time for another edition of the Cseekly Recap. I'm your host Csomm, and I'm here to go a bit deeper into the topics that I've covered in my shorts. The footage behind is from the game Death Stranding 2. Let's get the show on the road. The first story of the day is all about Crimson Desert and its story. In this particular news, Crimson Desert's story might be more confusing than you actually thought. Voice actor Alec Newman, who voices Cliff by the way, revealed he struggled to understand the narrative during development, with major story elements changing over time and key emotional moments added later. You don't have to be a genius or a wizard or a clairvoyant person in order to figure out that the story is actually a mess. I mean, that's the thing that's supposed to grip you in the beginning of the game, and for the first couple of hours, it's just a disjointed mess. This is obviously my opinion because I am always playing games with story on the first place because that's the driving factor when I'm doing something. You have to have a story and a reason why your character is doing all these things. And when the story is this poorly presented, at least in my opinion, obviously you're gonna have problems getting into the game itself. Now, some people don't have issues with this particular problem and more power to them. And they have decided to play the game their own way, which is, for the most part, focusing on the open world exploration element of the game. And like I said, again, more power to you. If you can do that, amazing, very happy for you. I, on the other hand, cannot. I don't know what was going on through the heads of developers when they decided this is going to be the introduction of the general story, the things that you do in the game, like saving cats, cleaning chimneys, and all that stuff. But it definitely, in my book, doesn't have a lot of sense. And the funny thing is, when I think about it, only with a couple of tweaks you could have changed it in order to be more gripping, and it still wouldn't be top of the line storyline, but it needs to be serviceable at least. I mean, check Skyrim's story, for example. Nothing extra, but it does have a head and a tail, so to speak. So yeah, I reckon with these particular insights that we are getting, I kind of feel that I was in the right when I said certain things, and I still wouldn't change my mind even if these things wouldn't be available to us. Because at the end of the day, like I said, I want a complete experience, not a half-baked experience where I'm kind of making stuff up in the head in order to justify the actions that I'm performing in the game. Still, at the end of the day, I would say that I could probably soldier through this type of a storyline, especially now that they have been fixing the controls and all the other elements of the game that I found to be lacking when I initially reviewed it, or rather, when I produced my first impression. And also, credit where credit is due, they are pushing these patches and fixes, even though most of the time I'm asking myself, was this really necessary? But apparently, if that's how they do things and they own it up later on, I guess it's gonna be okay at the end of the day. Speaking about things ending up okay at the end of the day, well, that's not really how things are looking at Eidos-Montreal. Because Eidos-Montreal has announced 124 layoffs alongside the departure of studio head after 19 years. This marks another wave of cuts as Embracer Group continues restructuring, impacting studios, projects, and thousands of developers across the gaming industry. And this wouldn't be a story that's, happening out of the blue, so to speak. We've seen all other gaming studios being closed or laying people off, stuff like that. You could say this is a trend in the gaming industry now, especially what happened with Epic employees, where Epic just fired around 1,000 people, I believe. So I was like, okay, it is what it is. Nothing you can change about the whole situation. But then this story happened a bit later this week. And it goes as follows. Eidos-Montreal has reportedly canceled a massive AAA game after spending hundreds of millions of dollars on development. The project, known internally as P11 or Wildlands, was nearly completed before being scrapped alongside a new Deus Ex title. Again, this follows layoffs and restructuring under Embracer Group. Now, this second story had me worried because, again, if you lay people off, sure, it happens, sadly, but that's how the situation is. But canceling a 100+ million game right before being completed? Now, that's fucking worrisome. Thing is, we don't really know anything about this project Wildlands, so I reckon we will never know what the game was all about in terms of story mechanics. We only know it was some kind of a open world fantasy or something along the lines. But what I am more worried about is the cancellation of Deus Ex title. See, Deus Ex Mankind Divided and Deus Ex Human Revolution were two games that I really fucking enjoyed. I thought the style, the aesthetic, the gameplay, everything was okay, even though when it comes to the story for the first game, it was a bit questionable, especially when we are talking about the ending of the first game, that is Human Revolution, where you just press a couple of buttons and then you have these slideshows and voila, you ended the game, congratulations. Still, I wanted to see what's happening with Adam Jensen in the third game, because since you already have two games, it was kinda logical to produce a third one and make it a trilogy, but apparently, as things stand, I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. And while I was thinking about this whole situation with Eidos-Montreal, I kind of went on Wikipedia to see what else were they making, what kind of franchises. And you have Tomb Raider, you have Marvel's Avengers, but then these last two entries kind of tickle my curiosity. See, they have Fable, but only as a supportive development for Playground Games, and Grounded 2, co-developed with Obsidian Entertainment. So what I am noticing here is that this studio, who was kinda making their own games, downgraded itself to do secondary stuff, like I already said, supportive development. And I suppose that can kinda give you the idea what the studio is going through, as in they don't really have stuff to do other than doing this supportive stuff because, yeah, they canceled two of their big games. So it makes you wonder, what is the future of Eidos-Montreal given the fact that these things are happening? Well, like I said, if you look short term, it's survival plus supportive work, which I already outlined, but medium term, it's either rebuilding, which means new leadership comes in and they make smaller scope AA projects, for example, or they decline further, with more layoffs, getting fully absorbed into Embracer pipeline, and then essentially lose identity as a creative studio. I don't know, man, to me it's just sad because I really wanted to see what's happening with Deus Ex, and it makes you wonder, will they even get a chance to lead the game again? I guess only the future will tell. Speaking of what's going to happen in the future, well, the US Patent Office has revoked Nintendo's patent related to summoning characters to fight for the player. The decision cites earlier patents from other companies rejecting all 26 claims, though Nintendo can still appeal. This could have major implications for game design and future legal battles in the industry. And right off the bat, I would just say immediately, in my opinion, patenting stuff, like game mechanics and all that shit, that's just fucking nasty. So what, if Nintendo managed to push this asinine patent, they could have easily sued anyone, any game that has some kind of a summon, even fucking Diablo at this point when it comes to summoning minions if you're playing as a necromancer. I mean, that's just fucking batshit insane if you ask me. It's safe to say that this patent should have never existed in the first place. And thank fuck the people at the patent office recognized this and cancelled all that Nintendo's bullshit. It's fairly obvious to anyone that these patents are just pushing gaming industry to a stagnation point, and we've seen what happens with Nintendo games, especially with Pokemon. Pokemon games up until recently were carbon copy of each, and there was no evolution, no nothing. They were just printing them because people would buy it. Again, there isn't any other game on the market, and even if there was, they would aggressively shut them down. And you can see that with Palworld. And what Palworld showed to people is that you can make a very fucking interesting game if you give some effort, because essentially Nintendo had monopoly and they got lazy because it's easy money. But for the consumer, it's just a shit show because you're getting subpar product when you can see evidently that there are better things that you can spend your money on and not to mention have more fun. One thing I would add to this whole patent situation is that this weakens Nintendo's legal pressure strategy, but I wouldn't celebrate just yet because, like I said, Nintendo can modify the claim, can narrow the patent, and they can appeal. And the key detail here is that even if one surviving claim manages to wiggle through, they can still use it in lawsuits. So again, this isn't over, it's just a major setback. Let's just hope that people in the future are not going to be this fucking dumb and allow these asinine patents, because long term, this is just fucking bad for the whole industry and it chokes creativity. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to see the same 10 Pokemon games all over again for the next fucking 20 years just because Nintendo can do it and print money off of it. I mean, it's a good strategy for Nintendo, but for everybody else, it's just fucking dumb. So yeah, let's hope that we don't see these types of news anytime soon. The final news that I want to cover, it's all about Bethesda. A former Bethesda artist claims Todd Howard was surrounded by too many yes men, with developers afraid to push back on ideas. According to him, that lack of criticism may have hurt projects, raising new questions about leadership behind games like Skyrim, Fallout 4, and Starfield. This is an interesting one because, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone was surprised by this situation, if it is true, that is. But for the sake of the argument, let's assume it's the truth. And what better way to analyze the state that Bethesda is in right now, other than taking a look at Starfield? Everything that can go bad went bad with that game. You wanted to make a galaxy full of planets that you can explore, but what we get is just a small tile where you can land, with all points of interest rotating, and that's about it. Even better, that small tile is huge enough for you to go on foot from one point of interest to another without even thinking that maybe you should add some kind of a vehicle to let players cover the distances faster, because at the end of the day, you're just dragging this game for no apparent reason. How about the missed opportunity of doing something with New Game Plus other than giving players different states when you enter the lodge? And then giving players a fool's hope that they might encounter something else based on the chances they have in the game. But let's not forget the best thing ever, which was you joining the pirate faction and essentially gating off everything else in the game because you're continuously wanted. You cannot land anywhere in the major city unless you have a bounty which you continuously need to pay off. It's safe to say that we can talk about the problems of Starfield forever, but these three examples that I gave are clear indicator of what a mess this game turned out to be. And if they follow Todd Howard's vision, or a vision that was held by a couple of people, and nobody had the balls to say something, which I completely understand, you don't want to go into a conflict if you're a developer and this is your only job, you just shut the fuck up and do the work, then this is basically what you get. And over the past couple of months that I have been covering this situation with Bethesda, this stuff is really making me worried about the Elder Scrolls 6. Because if we are in the same situation with people seeing that things don't really work or they don't make any sense whatsoever, and then these mechanics are still in the game, or at least they will be in Elder Scrolls 6, I don't think it's going to end up good for Bethesda, because people might be tired of their bullshit already. And when they get presented by something that's subpar or even worse that we had before, or possibly a continuation of bad things that have already been implemented in previous games, I think that the Iron Throne of Bethesda is going to crumble very fucking fast. As always, here's me hoping that this doesn't happen, but they really need a good slap in the face if they continue to push this stupid shit more and more. Because the time for leniency towards Bethesda has come to an end. And they will finally be judged properly, instead of letting them wiggle through all the bullshit that they have been pushing out, just because. I don't even know what's the reason why people are not calling them out more, but it is what it is. And that's basically it when it comes to the news that I covered this week. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I encourage you to leave comments. I read all of them, and I'm very happy to interact there with you guys. If you enjoy this content, consider liking it and subscribing for more discussions like this. And that's it from me, until the next one.